Welcome to the Property Couch, where each week you get to listen to two of Australia's leading property experts. Bryce Holdaway, co-host of Location Australia on Foxtel's Lifestyle Channel, and Ben Kingsley, Chair of Property Investment Professionals of Australia, and the 2014 and 2015 Property Investment Advisor of the Year.
Hi folks, this is Stiggy and you're listening to the Property Couch, the insider's guide to property finance and money management.
Ben, she did it!
She did it!
Can you believe that she did it?
Wow, Stiggy.
Stiggy, everyone's been waiting for
Stig.
that Stiggy.
What about the Stig? Can you do it with the Stig?
No, she won't answer any questions.
That's
like
it now.
that was part of the agreement.
Bang.
She's wait till we get to the life hack. She'll do that in minimum effective dose, and then the outro she'll Ibis.
Well done, Ibis.
You do exist.
Very
well done. Very impressed.
There we are.
Hey, Ben, 150 episodes. Where's your streamer? You do it every other time. Who would have
Sure, I do
thought?
my harmonica as well.
Yeah.
One moment, please. I'm just not ready. I've got to prep.
We should have got Stiggy to do that as well. Hey, what a couple.
Sorry for those people
there's
wearing
a few milestones, Ben. We've got Ibis doing intros.
Yes.
Or should we say the Stig?
We do.
And we also finally got Margaret to join us on the couch.
Great to have Margaret on.
Yeah, so we flew up to Sydney.
Yep, flew up to Sydney, and that was easier for Margaret. She's a busy lady. She's she's very. She's one of the hardest working and smartest people in property.
She probably won't like me saying this, Ben, but I bought my first investment property in 1999. I started back in 1996, I think it was, when I saw Jan Summers on the Ray Martin show.
Yep.
So I just was feverishly just sort of consuming as much stuff as I could.
Saving.
And the thing is that Margaret was one of those early pioneers. Jan was the
was.
first book, but Margaret's books, I
Yep.
remember seeing her on Foxtel. Mum and Dad got the Foxtel signed up, and I was watching her shows as soon as they came out, and I read a lot of her books. So, we've known Margaret for a while. We
have.
You talk to her regularly. I talk to her regularly.
She sits on the board of PIPA with me. Yep.
But it was nice to get her on the couch. So I think before we go to that interview that we recorded yesterday, just a reminder that that webinar that you finally got done
Roll the eyes. Finally. What are you talking about?
is now out.
I did too.
It's out. So the way you do it is you go down to thepropertycouch.com.au
Rightio.
and do what again?
You just give us your email address
How?
by requesting the money smarts.
Very good. So therefore we've got your name and your email address. And then every Thursday,
Right.
our super producers send out a Throwback Thursday email, Ben.
Ooh.
And it summarises all of the life hacks and the mindset minutes
And the links.
and the did you knows. And on that is a link, Ben.
Ooh.
There's a link to the webinar. So you can check that out over the Christmas break.
And that's my interest-only webinar.
Yeah, so
sometimes it works for some people.
and also, Ben, for folks who love a bit of social media, go and check out the Facebook page, the Property Couch.
Okay, right. What happened?
Well, apparently, we get into what you have for lunch.
Oh, a bit of banter.
We've merged money smarts, money tips, and fried rice. So go and check that out so that you can see where the link is. But worth a bit of a look. But yeah, folks, if you're on our list, we'll send you all of our resources, and not only that, Ben, all of the future resources that we have next year, all the videos, the webinars. It'll be available to those people so we can let them know through our Throwback Thursday email that we send out. So there we go, folks. Go and check that out. Today for my Mindset Minute, and today's about the Stig, Ben. So
yes.
Mindset Minute.
Oh, well, we've got to congratulate her for coming out of her comfort zone.
Yeah.
Well done.
All of the best things happen in the discomfort zone, Ben.
They do.
You don't want to be in the delusion zone. You don't want to be in the comfort zone. You want to be in the discomfort zone. Oh. So that could have been my Mindset Minute, but it's not.
That could have been. Oh,
but it's not.
You're going to give us two.
It's not.
Right.
If you think you can, you can. If you think you can't, you can't. Either way, you're right. So that was to you, Stiggy, because you didn't think you could do that. But clearly you just proved that you could. But no pressure. But you got 2 more segments to go. So just let's practice. And whilst you're warming up, we'll cut straight to the interview with Margaret. So Ben, 150 episodes. Who would have thought we made it this far when starting on the Samsung with Ibis in our little office? But we've got a very special guest today.
A huge person in the property industry.
Now,
Huge in figurative sort of sense, not in actual physical sense.
The listeners couldn't see that, but our guest was wondering if you were talking about physical. But we've been asking for Margaret to come on since about the 50th episode.
I think we have. She's a busy girl.
So,
busy
Margaret,
lady.
welcome to the couch.
Thank you for having me.
You made us work for it. We finally got you from the Central Coast to come and join us on the couch.
I did say no quite a lot of times, didn't I?
You did.
And in the end, you just made me feel so guilty that I had to come on.
Tick, guilt.
That's right.
Guilt.
We don't care.
Straight the guilt
We
card.
don't care how
Women
we get.
suffer guilt, and so that's what you've got to do.
Hey, before we pushed by, you mentioned that you've been doing the property education stuff since 2001. I remember back then, I remember reading your books, I remember watching you on Foxtel when my parents got that. But before we sort of get into your property story, how did that sort of eventuate from you being a person who was just investing in anonymity to then sort of moving over to the public profile?
Well, the way it all began was many years ago. I was living in Perth. I'd met my second husband there. Mm-hmm. We had gotten married and had 2 children together, and I'd brought 3 into that relationship. And I was actually working, I had my own business as a training company. I used to tender for government courses, run training courses for people who are on Centrelink benefits. I used to run Train the Trainer. You may have heard of that. Well, I invented Train the Trainer. A lot of people don't know that.
Wow.
But I invented that course and had it nationally accredited.
Is that an exclusive on the couch?
Yeah.
I think you may have told some other people about it in the past.
Yeah. So
that's good.
And that's a long time now. My husband was a policeman, and we were always looking around for ways to make extra money and make our own lives that little bit better. And I had started writing resumes and things like that from home in my spare time. We were always working, and I'd convinced my husband that we needed to buy this very expensive computer and printer back then, $5,000. I think we got a loan for it.
Dot matrix?
Yeah, pretty much. And we bought that, and I did resumes from home. One night, a regular client who used to come around and get me to do application letters for him, I was very good at writing these application letters, told me he had to hurry home because someone was coming to help him, to tell him how to pay off his mortgage earlier. And I said, I want to pay off my mortgage earlier.
Yeah.
Please have that guy contact me after he's seen you. Anyway, cut a long story short, the guy contacted me, showed me this wonderful way to use a line of credit and a credit card, which many people know today as being rapid mortgage reduction, and offered to help me set all this up for a fee. And I can remember saying to him, look, I don't need you to do that for me. I can do it for myself, thank you. But what I would like to do is I'd like to work for you because I think it's a good system and I'd like to show other people how to do that. So I started working for this guy, showing my friends and family and other people just how to manage their money a little better. We decided pretty quickly on, my husband and I, that we didn't like the company we were working for, that we didn't like their ethics, we didn't like the fees and charges that they were charging and not delivering on that. So we decided that it was something that we could do on our own, and we went out on our own, and Destiny was born as a side business beside the work we both did through the day. And we built that in Perth. And we had a lot of clients, a lot of people were very excited to hear more about what we had to say. We had a good amount of clientele, and we decided to move to the East Coast. I'm from Sydney. My father hadn't been well, and we decided we should be back here. So we moved over. So we gave up our jobs. We got the kids out of school. I had 5 children under 10.
Wow.
We moved back over to the East Coast with $80,000 in the bank, which was the sum total of everything we owned after we'd sold up everything, with a desire and a dream to really build a business over on the East Coast. We felt there was more opportunity to do so. And so we began, and the first couple of months were tough. There's another big story around that. But in the end, we made some decisions that led to us doing quite well in our local area. So we'd been working for about 2 to 3 years on the Central Coast, maybe 4 years, when a lot of it, when we decided that we needed to do more than just pay off our mortgage early, we had some equity in the property that we bought to live in, and I started to become interested in property investing. And I cast about for information to help me do that, but there wasn't much around. This is late 1990s, and the only book that was available was Jan Summers' Real Estate Investing, or I think it was Creating Wealth Through Real
that's
Estate
right.
Investing.
We've had Jan on. She's amazing.
Yeah, she's amazing.
Yes.
But the one thing about her book, and her book was great because it definitely got me started.
Yeah.
But her book was really more about the physicality of buying property, how to recognise a bargain, how to use your eyes. She talks about medium price property around where you live.
Yep.
And I just felt there was a lot more to it than that. And the first property that we bought by coincidence was a positive cash flow property. And we started to look more and more into that. We bought a couple of properties of our own, and then our clients started to say to us, well, you know, you guys, you're investing in property. We want to do that too. You need to help us do that. And so we started to help our clients to buy property. And it was all very informal. And I think one day someone said to me, oh, gosh, Margaret, you just explain things so well. You have to write a book. And so I did. And the first book, How to Create an Income for Life.
Great title.
Actually, How to Make Your Money Last as long as you do was the first one. How to Create an Income for Life came fairly soon after. And both of those books became bestsellers fairly quickly. Yeah,
there was an appetite for it, wasn't there? So can we just take a couple of steps back? And for the listeners, obviously we're passionate about giving money management advice. So let's talk about, this rapid debt reduction mortgage, because it's not something that we talk about a lot these days. But back in the day, we're going back 20 odd years ago, where effectively the line of credit, all the money funneled into the one account, which meant that the interest, the offset story wasn't so called there, and basically you paid everything on credit and you had a rolling thing. So do you want to talk more about?
Yeah, and look, that concept is still one that can work very well, although not quite the way the Spookers painted it at the time. The Spookers painted that you could get this special loan, which no one knew much about at the time, but essentially it's like a giant credit card securitized by property. And you could get this loan, and if you used it right, you could shave 12 years off your mortgage and pay it off in 8 years. Now, in truth, while there is an element of interest offsetting when you do that, and the system is that every cent you earn goes into your mortgage first and sits there as long as you can allow it to, while you take advantage of an up to 55 interest-free day credit card to pay everything. And then once that credit card statement becomes due, then you draw back out of that line of credit, pay it all off, and never pay interest on your credit card, and you're offsetting interest in your line of credit. The truth is that while there's an element of interest offsetting, if all you ever do is put the money in and take it all back out again... Correct.
If you spend over...
Then you're not going to... You'll save a little bit of time, but I think we did the figures once, and it's 12 months maybe that you shave. The way it worked was really that you took out less than you put in, and you made extra repayments on the loan. So these days there's a number of ways that you can achieve that, either through making the direct extra repayments or through an interest offset account. I guess the biggest difference, and why I still like lines of credit, is that lines of credit are approved for you with a limit that doesn't go away, whereas a P&I loan must be paid down. So 10 years down the track, you may have created $50,000 worth of equity that's still there to just pull out as cash, and you can use that as a deposit somewhere, or to go to the casino if that's your choice. But and so I do like that element of a line of credit, that limit is always available, whereas with a P&I loan it's a decreasing amount that's available because you have to have natural reduction on the loan.
And I mean, a lot of those spruikers, as you were talking about, did get out there into the mum and dad households, and they were telling, and people were still not disciplined around their money.
It was
and they were using it for the wrong reasons. And the idea that the first time that those people were calling them in was because they were having trouble managing their money. So to give them an evergreen facility was just crazy.
It was catastrophic. And in fact, one of the reasons we chose to leave the company that I originally started working for was that they had no financial management backing around the whole system. What we did is we developed a lot of systems around how to manage your money.
Yeah.
We did a lot of tracking, we did a lot of budgeting with people, and aside from actually moving in and sleeping at people's houses, we made them accountable to someone for what they were spending. And because they knew that every month Margaret was going to come into the house and have a look over the budget, they were too damn scared to go, to do the wrong thing. Yeah. And so they did try harder under those circumstances.
I agree.
And it is that accountability. And it's interesting because that entire accountability became something that we took all the way through into property investing. You know that when people come to you to invest in property, they may have been able to invest years ago and they just never got around to it, or they weren't disciplined enough, or whatever. They put it off. Adding accountability in some way to how you help people absolutely makes them meet the mark, and it setting goals for them and helping them to be accountable for the action that they take usually makes most people more successful.
Totally does. I mean, the same sort of reason why you might get a personal trainer. You know that there's someone waiting there for you, and that gets you out of bed to actually do the work. Because if you don't have that accountability partner, I mean, in our business, we trialled a money management solution for clients back in 2007 to 2009, and we signed these customers up, and it was a monthly review of their situation. They'd send their statements in, we'd analyse them. It was fascinating. It was a fascinating study on human behaviour. 50% of them thrived, and 50% of them dived. In the sense that 50% of them, and the ones who did have the money troubles, just put their head in the sand, and they didn't even want that accountability. Like they desperately wanted it, but the fact that they were still impulse buying and not disciplined around their money, they didn't want to have another human being basically give them a lecture each month. So they fell off the program, and so
happens all the time.
It does, So it comes back to, I think this is a good lesson for all the listeners, is around. You've got to have a mindset that says to you that if you're going to make this change, you've got to be true to it. You've got to be true to it, because even with the best advisors, if people don't come on the journey and say, I need to make a shift and change in my attitude, it's going to be the same thing.
That sounds fairly simplistic, and it's much harder than that, and there's much more to it. And when you decide that you're going to be committed to a job every day, you go to that job and you will go every day unless you're sick and really sick. And the reason you go every day is because you're committed to the job, and what you're actually doing is you're committed to making someone else wealthy. But when it comes to property investing, what you do is you do it in the time you have left over. At the end of the week, if you've got any, and no one ever has time left over, you get to Saturday, and if you do have time left over, you might be hungover from, going out the night before, or you've got soccer with the kids or whatever. By the time you get to Sunday, you just want to relax and you're too tired. And you think to yourself, well, I'll do that next week. I'll definitely be more committed next week. What you have to do, whether you're in the market to buy now or at some time in the future, is put yourself in what I call the property headspace. And that means saying to yourself, here's my week's calendar, and on Saturday between 9 and 11 is my property headspace time. Now what you do in that property headspace depends on where you're at. You might not be in the market to buy because you can't qualify for another year or whatever. You still have that 2 hours or 4 hours or whatever you're prepared to commit. And in that time, you might go online and get yourself motivated by looking around. You might read a magazine, you might read a bit of a book, but you must commit to that time. And if someone says to you, Ben, can you meet me down at the shops for a coffee on Saturday morning? You say, I can, after 11. And you commit to it. And I find that when people do that, it's amazing how their success goes from here to here, and you can't see me, but I'm doing the thing with my hands now, showing you the space. And they really do, because the second thing that happens is if you're accountable to other people as well as to the system of having your property headspace, then you also have this sense of competition, this sense of I don't want to fail everyone else in my group, and all of that going.
So you mentioned Headspace. Can we go back? What was it like? $80,000 in the bank. You've moved over from Perth. That just highlights all good things come from Perth. Then. So, but you
or spending time in Perth.
And you've got some, you've got some terrific material that we've got now in 2017. But back then, when you were trying to establish yourself personally, as well as create these courses for what would be your future clients, how did you find the time? Did you create some headspace time for yourself because you're a mother of 5, you're moving back to New South Wales, there was a lot going on.
I've never seen Margaret not work.
Yeah.
Like in the time that I've known you, you are a workaholic. You're amazing.
And look, I don't know that it's a workaholic. I do know that I'm a highly productive person, and that is true, and I know everybody's different. My output is very high, and I believe that I can have 3 times the output in an hour than the average person. It's just a thing. It's my thing. Look, even something simple, for example, my husband, who runs the national company, Destiny, and always has, very, very smart man. He's actually a software engineer and an architect, a software architect, very, very smart guy. If he has to write a letter, some important letter, he will every time send it to me, because he'll say to me, that's going to take me an hour to write that letter, you will write it in 3 minutes. And he knows I will, because it's just in my head, the same way that I write a book in a week, because it's just a skill that I've got. And I'm not the only one on the planet, but that skill a lot of people do have. But if you want to develop a skill like that, I think it's just all about not thinking about what you can't achieve and not seeing anything as a barrier. To me, sure, I had 5 kids. I mean, there's a funny story around moving back from Perth. Well, it's not so funny at the time. We moved back with the $80,000 in the bank. We got down to only $20,000 because we were trying to get the business established. It wasn't happening. We just weren't getting clients. We just didn't know what to do. We knew we could be good with clients, but we weren't good at marketing, and we weren't that good at business. We were okay at business. And so I was out one day pounding the pavement doing a letterbox drop when I came home and my husband said, I've called the radio station because I heard an ad on the radio today, see about radio advertising. And I was like, okay. So they came around the next day and they listened to our problem, and they went away and they came back the following week and said, okay, we've developed this campaign. It's a month-long campaign, and it's going to cost you $18,000.
Oh, they'll leave you too?
They'll leave us too. So we went, oh, okay, that's a lot of money. And it was a lot of money back then. And we're talking 1997. So it wasn't, a small amount of money. It was all we had left in the bank. We were renting at the time as well, and I really mean it was all we had. So we said, we'll think about that, and we thought about it overnight, and the next morning I said to Ruben, when we moved here from Perth, we bribed the children by saying we'll be closer to Movie World. And so they said, oh, cool. So we all moved thinking Movie World was in our future. So I said to him, how about we do this? How about we spend $18,000 on the advertising campaign and $2,000 going to Movie World? Because there's not much difference between having nothing and having $2,000. It might as well have a lot. And that way, if it doesn't work, at least we've been to Movie World.
Well, look, the best part about that is that you've also got the skill set. Like, you knew that you could find work.
That's the point.
And Ruben was a police officer, and so all of that was going to.
We said that. Yeah. I mean, we both didn't have jobs at the time, of course, because we were in the business, but we both knew. We were confident that we could
transferable skills.
I think I'm highly employable, and I think I could probably, even back then, I could have pretty much gotten most jobs that I would have wanted to go for. So we did have that confidence behind us. So the radio station said to us, look, when the campaign starts, we don't want you to panic because it takes a week or 2 for the frequency to build up and people to start ringing. So think about doing something else. And I said, how about Movie World? We'll go to Movie World. And they went, yeah, good idea. So on the day 1 of the campaign, we get up in the morning at 6 o'clock and pile all the kids into the car, and we had a Falcon with an extra bench seat in the back. So 5 kids in the back, 16-month-old baby. So we're in the car. We transferred all the calls from the home office to our brick mobile at the time, just in case, and we stuck all the kids in the back. I think we got to Taree, and it was time for morning tea, so we stopped for morning tea, and it was just going 9 o'clock, and it was time for the ad to go. So at 9:03, after the news, the ad went on. At 9:04, the phone began to ring. And I'm in the car saying to the kids, shh, shh, shh. And I'm answering the phone and go, good morning, welcome to Destiny. How may I help you? As if we've got this fabulous big company somewhere. And by the time we got to the Gold Coast, we were solidly booked for 3 months worth of appointments.
Wow.
And
what was the call to action? What were they saying on the radio?
So the call to action was the important thing. And at the time, they did this great little skit. And it was destiny in a courtroom. And the judge said, so you are charged with helping your clients pay off their mortgage in 8 years and saving them thousands of dollars in interest. How do you plead? And we went, guilty. And it was very clever.
Nice book,
But what we also had, we actually had a risk reversal in there, which is very important in all advertising. And the risk reversal was, if we can't save you at least 7 years on your mortgage and X amount of dollars, I can't remember the dollars now, we will pay your next month's mortgage for you.
Okay. Yeah.
So that's big, because if you're going to go into someone's
down.
home,
They
need a risk reversal.
Yeah.
The risk lay with us, not them. Singer.
Absolutely.
And so that worked really, really well.
So you started out in the property game. What are some of the sort of biggest things for you that took you from a novice to being an experienced investor? Like, what were the three
and how
biggest
long
things?
Yeah.
And how long did it take you?
So it's probably important to point out here that when I wrote my first book, I only owned 7 properties. So it was probably me being thinking that I was an expert at that stage was quite laughable when I look back on it. Although, to be fair,
arguably
it was still 6
7.
more than everybody else at the time.
Yeah, people with 2 or 3 would say that they're an expert.
Yeah, and people didn't have a lot of property back then. It was quite new. If you did have a property, it was probably because you saw the house next door and liked it and thought, I should buy that.
Yeah.
Or you got sucked in
Your
and
own
bought a holiday
backyard.
house somewhere on the Gold Coast,
Yeah.
a unit on the Gold Coast. But looking back, when I wrote that first book, and I read it back over, and while I think there's some good information in it, it's notable by what's missing from that. And the very important things that I learned over the years, right up until I wrote the 20 questions, and then how to invest in the right property now, or investing in the right property now, which I think is arguably my best book. And most people don't realise that. It's the biggest seller is the 20 questions. So, but investing in the right property now is a really good expose on growth drivers, and that's why I like it. And I think it was when I first realised and worked out, and I'd like to think I first coined that phrase, growth drivers for property as well. When I first worked out that there were identifiable drivers that you could see before or ahead of time, that I really felt like I became an expert at that point in time. Up until then, my expertise purely came from trial and error. And I think the other important point to point out as an expert is that I'm an expert who's constantly in the game. And I think that's critical. So I don't just write a book with great information in it that I stole from someone else. I read a lot of books where I'm pretty sure they stole it from me since I've written a couple of my first few books. And I
always think there's 2 circles, and one's the experience and one's the theory, and where you merge the two, that little spot is where you sit. That's
perfect. Yeah, that's a perfect analogy. I can still sit in the seminar of the latest expert, Ben, I mean, you've been around a long time, and so have you, Bryce. But you know how every year there's a new one, and they might last a year and then they're gone. And you sit in the audience, you listen to them, and you think, oh my gosh, how can you be saying that stuff that we all stopped saying 20 years ago, and now you're saying it now.
I wonder when Margaret was saying that about me, Ben.
It's all, it's when the speaker's got an agenda. That's when you know that. Look, and I've said this before, I said with a lot of the speakers, 70% of what they say is actually pretty good. It's that 30% that then tweaks it towards their agenda.
I'm not as kind as you, Ben. I don't think 70% is any good. I think it's the other way around. 30% of stuff's pretty good, and the rest is all garbage and crap designed to push themselves. And that's fine. It's pretty easy to work out the difference between a bona fide expert and a spruiker. That's quite easy to do. Although these days anyone can write a book as well. So you're not necessarily an expert even if you write a book.
No.
You mentioned that your most recent one is the one that you think is the one that's got the most value.
That's not my most recent. My most recent book is actually an update.
Bring it all together,
of the
isn't it?
first three.
And
So
then
I
it's
got the
merged,
first
yeah.
three, merged them together into a 3-section book and updated the information. But it's got some information about growth drivers, but it's the orange book, which is the second last book, which I think is really the book. I think that's the book.
So you've done 8?
Yes.
8 books. Is a 9th on the cards? You're done.
Yes, I'm doing
Oh,
one.
I thought there was going to be no.
Okay.
But,
I thought it was like,
Well, if you asked me a couple of weeks ago, it was going to be no. But I'm really excited about this next book because it's actually a book on developing.
Okay.
And I'm
Okay.
writing it with Peter Kalizos.
Oh, great.
Yes.
Oh,
That's a scoop. Is that a scoop for the
Yeah,
That's a
there's
scoop.
another
There's a scoop.
exclusive,
That's
so,
a
which is
scoop.
terrific. But so today's Wednesday, so that book should be done by
Well, you know
Saturday,
what?
shouldn't it?
The interesting thing about this book is that it can't be done like that because what it is, it's called Diary of a Small Developer. And so I'm actually diarising a development I'm doing from beginning to end. And Peter's the guy who's my guru in
The guy.
this.
Yeah.
Is the guy.
And so the book is a diary, day
Yeah.
1, I think we're up to day 70.
Yep.
And it's going to take a year to write this book. It's going to take, and it's very raw. This book, I like it because it's very raw. So it's going to be interesting as well.
Yeah.
And even Peter, he read my first couple of chapters before he started his input, and he said, "Oh gosh, you're just so honest, aren't you? Because I'm writing how I'm feeling as I'm doing this development. So it's the frustrations, it's the anger, it's the excitement.
It's wild work.
When something happens."
How many on the site that you're doing? 3 townhouses? Or
This is the very sad part, and I have decided to commit to the book. It was 4, and we bought the site for 4 before I decided, because we did everything backward, which is why I wanted to write the book, to say, don't do it the way I did it.
Yeah.
Because what will happen to you is what happened to us, which is we bought to build 4, and then just after I started writing the book and Peter was helping me, he came back with the bad news that the town plan had changed since we bought it. And that we could only get 3, and 3 isn't feasible. We don't make any money out of 3. And I'm okay with not making any money because I was not going to sell them anyway. But from a rental point of view, the upside's not that good from that either. And the area, which is a great area, but the growth is a long way off, I think. So it's come down to 1 and an upgrade of the existing. So we'll keep the existing instead of...
So
it'll be
like a
2
bit of a
in the
battle
end.
axe.
But in the middle of it, I mean, we're now up to day 74. And I've just finished 2 lots of 4, which didn't make me an experienced developer, and this is why I wanted to write it, because I got so many people to do so many things in it and handed it all over that I learned nothing and I paid too much, and I didn't want to repeat that. So that's why I'm doing it this way. So I'm learning as we go. But in the middle of all of this, it's in South Australia. But in the middle of all of this, I've identified another site that I have in New South Wales that I thought I could do 3 on, and I've just found out last week I can only do 1. But I can sneakily get around that because this is actually one that I will Airbnb. I already Airbnb the existing old house.
Great.
I can do a granny flat and a dual key 1 residence and still get 3 rentals out of it. So I think I might start that at the same time and develop that too.
Brilliant.
Now the question for me that comes up, because you've been doing this for long enough, you're not doing it for the money anymore, you're still very active. What's the exit? What's the end game? What's the point for you?
I'm glad you talk about the exit strategy because I'm very different than a lot of experts when it comes to that. And I know that if you're going to see a financial planner, they will say you need an exit strategy before you begin. But I don't believe that that's necessarily true with property. And there's 2 reasons for that. The first reason is that as we have experienced this year, legislation can rapidly change and completely change the outcome for you. We've seen that happen with superannuation. There's been something like 178 changes to superannuation legislation in 15 years. It's a lot of changes. It means that whatever plan you had going in may not even be feasible going out. So I think if you're too focused on your exit strategy, you'll be too rigid in your entry strategy and in the process, and you might miss opportunities to be flexible and change. Let me give you a good example for that. When I first came into this whole thing, I had an exit strategy, And that strategy was that I would buy 10 or 12, which, let's be honest, that's all anyone needs. They don't, 7 to 10. That's all they need. They don't need 40.
7 great ones.
Madness,
Very good.
40.
Yeah.
Stupid.
Do you know anyone who's stupid?
No, no single person with 40
silly?
properties.
No one's silly as that, no.
Any person. So when I went in, I was going to buy 10. And by the way, I've got to say, when I say I mean we.
Yes.
My husband gets upset.
Yeah.
He goes, oh, your property.
Sorry, Ruben, I know
portfolio.
that's all right.
It's us.
Do a title search on my name and you don't see too many properties in it.
But we will say I. And both of our names are on all of our titles, so we do buy them together.
Okay.
So when I first came in, and that was my plan, I was planning to buy 10, and then when I got to a certain point, I would have them all valued. I'd sell half, pay off the debt, and be left with 5 debt-free.
Mm-hmm.
But now I realise what a dumb strategy that is, because when you retire, rental income is the only investment income that the bank will accept for serviceability. So if you've got a substantial rental income, they will accept that for serviceability. And the second reason why it's a dumb idea is because if I sell half of them, then I've lost my exposure to half the market. If I instead kept them, then all of those properties, providing they're paying for themselves, and if you play this right, they will be by the time you
If you
retire.
stage it,
They
absolutely.
can keep looking after themselves. So instead of having, just say I had $10 million worth and I sold half and I only had 5, then I've got 5 million growing. Because after you retire, your property portfolio is not retiring.
Correct.
It's still growing.
working for
It's
you.
still going to work and grow. So say I sold half and I'm left with 5, $5 million grows. And if it goes up by 50% over the next 10 years, it's worth 7.5. Okay, I owe nothing on it, so I've got 7.5 million worth. But say I kept the whole 10 and I only owed 5 on it, and in another 10 years' time it goes up by half, it's 15 million.
Correct.
And I only owe 5 because I still owe 5, and now I'm worth 10, not 7.5.
Yeah.
So it doesn't make any sense to do that. Now, that works for now because there's a whole lot of rules around capital gains tax that favour me, around holding that favour me. But if tax rules change, that might not, and I might need a different strategy.
Well, I mean, if the tax laws are only going to change in a way where the capital gains exemption is going to be smaller, so it's actually going to encourage more people to hold. It's
on.
what the government should be looking at, because if you want liquidity in the marketplace, if you want affordability, you need supply. If everyone's going to hold on to their assets now and just live off the rental income, the government is going to also then miss out on it. Something of nothing is nothing, isn't it? Like ultimately, if I don't sell, you get nothing.
Yes.
If I sell it and there is a capital gain, you're going to get something of that.
Capital gain is far more valuable to you unrealised than it is realised.
Yeah.
But there's a warning for young players here, and that is to be careful. And if you go in with a buy and hold strategy, for example, be flexible enough to know that sometimes some of those properties have got to go. Sometimes, and some of mine have gone because sometimes they're like a millstone around your neck. They weigh you down. They're not doing anything for you, and all you're doing is throwing good money after bad. So even a buy and hold strategy needs to be manipulated and massaged and examined and decided whether or not, on an ongoing basis, it's still relevant and appropriate.
Classic sell v hold review that you need to do. Yep.
But in terms of exit too, there's also lifestyle design, and you're just continuing to charge forward. And was when you and Ruben decided that you wanted to build a portfolio, was there something in terms of lifestyle, adventure activities, things that you thought you'd be doing at the end of it, or did you always just think that you're stimulated by this, it floats your boat, you want to keep going, and there's no sort of end in sight? Because obviously, the listeners are, some of them are building a portfolio so they can exit out from maybe a job they don't like.
Yes.
But that's not you. You love what you do.
I'm fortunate that my property headspace is a daily thing because my work is about the property headspace. So I motivate myself. I'll do a seminar and I'll come off the stage and go on and trawl the internet for my next property. That's how excited I get about property. I love it, which is crazy because I hate it too, but I love it. And I don't get tired of my job. I can hand on heart say I don't get tired of my job. I love it. I love interacting with property investors. I love hearing their stories. I just love it. I love helping people. And you're right, Bryce, I don't do it out of any financial motivation.
You're beyond that now.
I truly don't.
Yeah.
And even in the beginning, I wasn't motivated by the money side of things. So for Ruben and I, we had a goal of being financially independent. I didn't want to be on the pension. My father was reliant on the pension, even though he had a business. He had a business for 45 years that the Department of Main Roads put a road through, paid him half its value when he was 59, and he didn't fare well from there. And he was a proud man, and it was horrible, and I guess it's a carrot and stick, isn't it? To me, it wasn't a carrot that I was going toward, but a stick that I was working away from. And that was really probably the subconscious goal, get enough for that. But Ruben, who is actually the smartest one out of the two of us, he'd always said, and he does a lot of reading. I do a lot of reading as well, but I read novels. He does a lot of reading, and he reads all the self-help and the personal development and all that sort of stuff. And he'd said right from the beginning, and he's always got classic lines that he says to me right from the beginning. He'd always said, we need to have an investment in 3 areas. We need to have an investment in business. We need to have an investment in investments. So some kind of investment, we choose what that will be, whether it's real estate or shares or whatever else. And then we need to also have an investment back in ourselves. And, he's always been spot on for that. And those are the 3 areas that you invest in. And we think about those before anything else. But we also have an element of fun that's on the side there that we've always been committed to. So we've worked and earned our money. We've invested that money first. And my kids will tell you about growing up and how tight money was and how we wouldn't let them have anything. And what, they don't say we were lousy parents, but they say we were stingy parents for sure. Nobody had anything unless they saved up for it themselves. And we gave to charity as well. We taught the kids that from the beginning. We used to make them give part of their pocket money to charity as well. So we did all that first. And then if there was any money left over, we had fun, but we also made sure that we planned for fun as well. Initially, it was all the free things we could do, and then Ruben and I started to travel. We made sure that we did a lot of that sort of stuff while we were young enough to enjoy it as well, because we knew that if all we did was focus just on investing and the future, one or the other of us may not have actually even made it there.
So, Margaret, obviously you do Your Money, Your Call on Sky, and you've got Property Success, which is going for many, many years. You spend a lot of time talking to councils and those types of things. What are some of the, some practical tips that you can give the listener around what sort of things you're looking for when you're looking at these growth drivers?
Yes. You know what? Probably the first thing is the hardest thing to measure, and that is how good the council is in terms of their capacity to see themselves as being in a business and to see themselves as the driving force behind their area. Because I've been into some great towns or suburbs where council is really active and really enthusiastic and passionate, and they've got plans galore for the area, and they've been areas that I've consequently invested in that have done really well for me that other people would have missed because they would have said, not investing there. I've been into other areas where council is lazy and full of the fat cats and, no idea and thinking small rather than big, and they're often the areas that don't do overly well. So I think the first thing is to have a look at the council website. You can tell from a council website whether they're a progressive and forward-thinking council or whether they're just doing curb and guttering and, a new playground. And you can tell. So that's the first thing that I say. Talk to council, see how willing and open they are, see how inviting they are for new development. We've been talking to a couple of South Australian councils in some suburbs that people haven't identified, finding that their arms are open for development. Yes, if we'll find a way to make that development work. If you want to come to us and
bring
build
the
that,
capital,
we'll help you.
Whereas other councils are going, no, you can't do that, you can't do that, you can't do that. We're not going to let you do that. Forget that. And those councils are negative on development. And I think that's how you start to first of all get the feel.
But you've unpacked scores? How many councils would you have done as part of the Property Success Show?
Gosh. Well,
are we talking over 100 or?
Oh, yeah.
So we have 22 episodes per season, and we've just finished season 9.
Okay, so.
And some years we've done 2 town spotlights per episode.
So it's 150 plus then, yeah.
Easy, over 200.
Yeah.
Easily over 200. And out of that, I'd say maybe 40 or 50 of them are being really good councils, and the rest terrible.
So they're giving you a sense of obviously their attitude in terms of making change, and that's around building a community and the social fabric that will attract people into it, as well as the infrastructure piece that goes with it.
So there's a whole lot of things that have to be in place, and just like if you're trying to make a cake, if you miss something, it's going to be a crappy cake. So you can't have 9 of your 10 ingredients because the cake isn't going to work. And it's the same with property investing. And people seem to forget this. When I say there's 20 questions, I don't mean you can do 10 will do, or 12 will do. It's 20. So you've got to have good answers to 20 questions before you buy in an area. And those questions are around some core things. The first one is, are the employment drivers. So it needs to have below the national average of unemployment, and it needs to have significant employment drivers to continue to see a couple of generations, because one generation of people isn't enough. You don't want to buy in an area where the kids are all 10 and they grow to 20 and then they all move, because you've got to have your young people in the area. If young people don't stay, that's the end of your area. Forget it.
9 comes in retirement towns.
And some councils I found are actually very focused on what do we do with our youth, and how do we they focused on youth unemployment, which is a really important thing for them to be focused on. So employment is really a big driver. But again, employment alone is no good, because you can have jobs, and if you don't have lifestyle amenity, then people will come and they'll go again. They won't stay.
There's that classic lifestyle.
So lifestyle to me is all about families, because families anchor in an area. You think about this for a moment. A family comes into an area. I mean, you both got young kids. You go to an area, you put your kids in school. I love the school. You don't want to move, do you? No. You're not going to move while your kids are in school, are you?
No.
So what that means is, if other things are present in the area that you live in, and we'll get to those in a moment, then the housing is going to be at a premium, because you're not ever going to move out of yours. So the pipeline supply is going to be reduced right down. So families are really, really important in an area. So population growth isn't enough. Population could be rapidly growing, but everyone could be over 70.
Yes.
And that's
right.
no good.
Because those growing nomads.
Those people are all going to sell and downsize, and they leave all the houses, and there'll be too many houses on the market. So families are really important. But to get the families to stay, the council has to recognise what they need. They need the childcare centres, they need the proper schools, they need an element of private school as well, because everybody in every area, there'll be a 10% of the population who want the private schools, so that they have to have that. They've got to have other things happening as well.
The sporting activity.
The sporting fields are
critical.
Transport, yes, but you know what? Surprisingly, transport's not such a biggie, because these days mum takes the kids everywhere. Kids aren't allowed to go on the bus anyway in case there's a pedophile on board. So so transport's not as big as it used to be. It used to be a big driver, not so much anymore. Transport logistics are important to be able to bring the goods and services into and out of an area, but public transport, not such a big thing. People say, but it's right near a bus station. Not a driver these days. So that's important. So jobs, lifestyle, families, all very important. The other big one that actually drives growth in an area is education, and it's tertiary education. So we want the university campuses and the TAFE campuses as well, because education is a big employer for starters, and it also means that the families are going to stay even longer if there's plenty of extended education. Now the final one is, and this is one that we don't get everywhere, is health. So we need to have health taken care of fairly locally. Again, a big employer, but it's a big service that families require as well.
To stay put. Fantastic. That's brilliant.
So in terms, like for me, I like to know a bit about your mindset. So you've clearly talked about the journey from Perth with 80,000, but what's different in your mindset now to back then, and how would knowing that earlier would have served you better throughout this process?
I think I'm exactly the same person I know I don't look the same now at all. And let's face it, I'm closer to 60 than any other significant age now. So I'll be 60 in 2 years.
What?
So, yeah, I'll be 60 in 2 years. I'll say that again
Hard to
because
believe.
I'm comfortable with that now. I'm 60 in 2 years.
Well, the listeners can't tell, but Margaret's looking wonderful, so we'll have to get a photo of.
So can you hear how I say that now very comfortably? I'll be 60 in 2 years.
Yeah, we heard the volume drop the first time.
I'll be 60 in just over 2 years. Now, I think, apart from the fact that I don't look the same as I looked when I was 30, I feel that I think the same. I was very fortunate that my father was a very encouraging person, and he and I were very close. Devastated, he died very suddenly when he was 77, dropped dead on the beach, which again I guess made me think, oh my gosh, that could happen so easily. Don't waste time on the small stuff, because the small stuff just does not matter. You know, being angry at other people, hating, feeling stressed, all of that is a waste of the very limited amount of years that we have available to us. But I think the one thing that I've realised with hindsight, and that I'm far more relaxed over than I've ever been, is that in my life I've had some incredibly challenging times. I've had terrible things happen to me, really terrible things happen to me. And I have learned that every time a terrible thing happens to me, down the track, whether it be a month or a year or 3 years later, a door opens that couldn't have opened if the terrible thing hadn't occurred. So now what I do when the terrible thing occurs is I go, I can't wait for that good thing. It's going to be great. Because it's almost like the degree of terribleness dictates the degree of greatness that is going to come in the future. So I can now deal with all of those roadblocks that get tossed in front of me, and there's been many of them, and I can take a deep breath and go, wow, something great is about to happen. I can't wait to see it. And it does help me deal much more easily with those terrible things.
It builds resilience. I mean, one thing, you know, we've sat down and had plenty of chats, Margaret, and I know that inside, you know, the journey that you've been on, there has been some, you know, incredible things that have happened in your life. But you still amaze me that you've been able to, you know, you're always glass half full. Cream always comes to the top. You know, you've been a big believer in that, and it's led to a very successful career. In terms of the investment leadership and the thought leadership that you provide into the industry is also incredible. Is there any, you know, regrets or anything that you know, if you had your time over again? You know, we can maybe relate that to a property purchase, or we can relate that to
I got a ton of it. Look, you can't build a portfolio of the size of mine without regretting some of your purchase decisions and regretting some of the ones that you didn't buy. I've got plenty of those.
I've got plenty of those.
Plenty of the ones that I've told everyone else to buy. I mean, who first talked about Blacktown before the Sydney boom? Me, and I've got the film evidence to prove that, because it was on the show that I first started to talk about Blacktown, and it was against the better judgment of everyone. They all said, no way. Well, Blacktown, if you have a look at the figures, was one of the best performers of the Sydney boom, and of course I didn't buy there. Why would I be smart enough to take my own advice?
So what was going on for you at the time? Because clearly you profiled it, and looking back you would have done it. What was going on for you at the time that you did it?
I think every now and then we do, my husband and I do say, every now and then we say we've got enough, we don't need to buy anymore, and we stop buying for a while. And I think it was just one of those times we went, come on, we've got enough.
Or you find a great one and you got no cash for it. Like your money's all allocated and you're like sitting back going, oh, that's a nice one. But, we found ways of looking after those, we give them to our client.
Yeah, I haven't quite got to that point yet where I've wanted some money and haven't been able to get it. I'm fortunate in that regard, and I think that's because I've bought properties that have got, you know, great rent returns, and the cash flow has been really good. So I'm always kind of adding to the cash flow pile rather than taking out of it with the purchases that I've made, and that's worked out to be a really good strategy for me. In hindsight, I wouldn't have bought the first property that I ever bought. It was a guy in a brown suit who sold that to me.
White shoes?
Yeah, mate, properly.
It had to be Queensland.
Came into the house. It was. It was off the plan in Queensland. The developer did go broke some years later, about 10 years later. But it just, look, I just didn't I just didn't do any research because I didn't know what research to do. It was my first property.
No internet.
I bought it in
Very
Cairns.
little.
I bought it for 161,000. 3 years later, it was worth 145,000, which is probably the real price. He would definitely have had about 15 grand built in his commissions at the time.
Yep.
Then I think at the height of its growth, I think it might have been worth about 225 at some stage.
2008.
But if I were to sell that now, I reckon I'd get probably 161,000 for it. And I've had that a long time. The only saving grace, of course, is that it has always been positive cash flow.
Yeah.
I've always had $300 a week rent return on it.
Yeah.
And it does need a refurb now, and I'm
Well, that's almost a
thinking about
10%
that.
yield based on the
I know.
isn't it?
So you can't, even the bad one. But look, there was another one that I bought, and it was just a stupid buy. And I wasn't that wet behind the ears. I was a little, and it was a block of land in Agnes Water that we bought on the basis of the fact that the council told me I could build 3 on it, and I saw some short-term dollars, and we bought it and delayed on the development of it. And when I went to do it, same old story. I could only do one, and because it's Agnes Water and the build costs are so high there, by the time I built it, it was going to end up having cost me like 850,000, and it would have been worth maybe 500. And it's just infeasible. Now I broke my own rule, and I hung on to that for years. Now imagine this: I paid 300,000 for the land, or 320. I was paying interest on that every year, right through 10 and 11% interest rates on that. And by the time we decided we couldn't do anything, we must have had that for 9 years and sold it for $270,000. That's a very expensive lesson. That's a lot of my money.
Yeah,
that's gone on that.
Some red ink there. So, in terms of, you get a lot of people coming up to you who want to make rich, quick activity out of property.
Yes.
What's your answer to those people? Is it the same answer, like property's a long-term game,
Yeah, it is. And you know what? I still read the articles in some of those magazines about someone who's got, 100 properties and all this stuff, and he's 21 or whatever. And I just think there's something they're not telling us.
Yeah.
It's not possible. We all know you can't do it.
It's
not
impossible
possible
to get that lending to be able to do that.
Possible
Yeah.
for someone in their early 20s to have those massive big portfolios of property. There's something going on there.
It's a huge inheritance.
It's helping. It's an
Yep.
inheritance, or
Correct.
it's parents guaranteeing, or it's
Correct.
something else going on there.
Yeah.
He is not doing it on his own.
Has to be guarantees, servicing, and also
Gotta be
100%.
So I want people to know that, first of all, what you see on the internet or on the television isn't necessarily always true.
What?
So people, you know, Bryce, you and I have been behind those cameras, and we know about the magic of television. But what you see, especially in the property game, don't make the mistake of looking at these people who are painted as being these fabulously successful property investors who have a lifestyle of the rich and famous and think, oh my gosh, I wish that was me, because they probably don't really have that life at all. That's the first thing. The only way to build a property portfolio is one property at a time, and do it like everyone else. You have to qualify, you've got to get equity. There are ways you can probably manufacture bits of equity, but be careful there too.
Yes.
Because there are certain things that will work and certain things that won't work.
Yeah.
Don't listen when the spookers tell you that they can buy you a property under market value and instantly give you 50,000 equity in it. That doesn't happen either. No, there's no secret. There's just no secret. It's buy a property, find out what the growth drivers are, buy a property in an area that's going to grow tomorrow, not that grew last year, and
let the power of compound and time do its thing.
That's it.
Show's over, everyone. Lock up. Pack the bags.
Secrets uncovered.
Uncovered.
We are delivering some gold here on the
We are.
150th Ben, and I'm conscious of time, but I want to get a couple of quick ones in.
Sure.
So have
Yes,
you
no, good.
So therefore, with what you've talked about, how then do you and Ruben measure success? It's obviously the scoreboard is financial, but what's the success? How do you guys know that you've made a contribution, and how do you put your head on the pillow knowing, hey, that was a good day?
So this isn't going to help property investors.
Yeah.
But I measure success through my children and just watching the fact that I have 5 children who are fabulous people.
Love it.
Yeah, love it.
And that's it.
Yeah.
And people actually say that to me. People say, your kids are fabulous people. So they're
doesn't
not
fall far from the
necessarily.
tree.
Yeah, it doesn't.
they're not
That's right.
necessarily, like huge. They don't have fabulously successful careers or anything like that. They are just nice people.
And wonderfully unique,
And they
they're their own
love
people.
each other.
Yeah.
And we're a very tight-knit family who would be there for each other in a heartbeat. And I would give up every single thing I own, even the most magical place where I live that I love and adore. I would give up all of that if it meant that if someone said you can have that or your family, it would be the family every time. And I think most people would say that about their family.
Yeah, look, I'm glad you said that too, because it's quite easy to get carried away with the material scoreboard stuff. But
Material things that don't actually mean anything to me, Bryce, I have to tell you. The only reason I've got a pretty good car, but not a flash car that turns heads, as some people say.
Yeah.
But that's only
Aston
because...
Martin.
No, it's just it's just a four-wheel drive,
Yeah,
and and I have a good car because I need it a lot, and it needs to be reliable.
Yep.
And
I
safe
don't
and-
change it over a lot, so I'm not a person who has to get a new car all the time. We get a lease on it through the business or a commercial hire purchase. When that's over after 5 years, then I'll change it, and that's it.
Yeah.
So, but material things don't mean anything to me. I love to travel,
Yeah.
so probably the only thing that I spend money on is travel,
Yeah.
but even that, I go overseas. I travel business class, but only because I have points.
Yeah.
I would never pay because I can't bring myself to part with that kind of money
For
for
that.
a flight.
It's experience.
Well,
So-
I mean, that's what you're getting when you're overseas.
The experience is invaluable.
They talk about it's proven, in terms of once you get to a certain level of financial stability and security, there's no more happiness after that point.
Yeah.
So how you create that happiness and the travel piece is really about the experiences.
It is.
And the adventures and,
the
the
memories that you create.
and everything that comes from that.
But
yeah.
everything else, we're very simple people at home.
Yeah.
We cook almost every night of the week. We do go out Friday nights because we've got a couple of little restaurants that we love that we go down to.
Yeah.
But we stay home, we cook, we take turns in cooking, so we cook every night. I don't know anything about brands. People say, well, that's a nice bag. What brand is it? Well, I don't have no idea. It's probably like Kmart or whatever I could get cheap. If I stay in hotels, I still spend an hour looking for the cheapest hotel I can find.
There's some
like
good
the
tips here,
nicest,
Ben.
There's
cheapest.
some great tips.
Because people have this view that people who are uber successful
just-
financially just squander it. But,
Oh, gosh,
No.
no way.
You know.
We do not. We are Ruben's worse than me, but we are real budgeters.
Yeah.
We still do it today. I can't bring myself to spend big money on stuff. I'd never have a boat. Oh my gosh, that would make me feel sick in the stomach to have a boat. Just stuff like that,
Yeah.
we just don't
But
have.
it's become habitual. It's become habit. You've been able to build that up, and it's served you well.
Yeah.
Why would you change?
And I'm happy. I don't need anything else.
Yeah.
What do I need?
Yeah.
I don't need anything else.
Exactly.
Now, I want to be very careful with this next question, Ben, because Margaret's a very successful person and very successful
Yeah.
in business, but you're
Cultural
also a very
Businesswoman of the
successful
Year.
woman in business as well.
Yes.
So we got a lot of female listeners. We got a lot of people coming to our business, females, which I'm sure you do. What's some of the messages that you would say to? Because back when you first started, it wasn't easy for women to do what
very
you've
hard.
done. Whereas now there's a lot more parity, there's a lot more equality that's there. But what message would you say to because we've got Rachel in our office and she goes, man's not a plan, right? So and that's great. But
Yeah, we like that.
ultimately we want to encourage our women to be independent and create their own plan. But what's your key message as a successful woman? Apart from the fact you're successful in business, but as a successful woman, what message would you give to our female listeners?
It's interesting because I used to do talks on this. I won the Telstra Businesswoman of the Year in 2006. And the year after that, you've got a commitment to doing a lot of business women meetings and things like that. And the one important thing, and this is going to be I'm always nervous when I talk about this because it's a little counterintuitive, and I think a lot of women often don't like hearing this, but to me, my biggest competitive advantage in business is being a woman. And I think when a woman thinks that in order to play on the same stage as a successful man, that they have to be more like a man, is entirely incorrect. And you do see some women who become a little hard around the edges and who try to be more like the guys, whereas I found that I've always been it's my femininity and my being a woman that is actually my biggest competitive advantage, because we as women we do actually have a lot of advantages over men. Men have advantages over women. We have a lot of advantages over men as well, in that we have a lot more natural gut instinct than men do as well. So when it comes to strategy, many women design business strategy around their gut, whereas men don't.
Yeah.
And being able to use that gut instinct is very, very useful in business. The other thing that's interesting that women do in business as well, and I don't know if you've ever picked this up, but men in business are usually very guarded about their strategy and their business, and they're competitive with each other, and they keep what they're doing next from each other. Women tell each other everything. And you probably noticed this with me, Ben. Anytime you ask me about my business, I tell you everything.
Yeah, likewise.
Yeah,
I'm unusual.
You're a girl, though. He's a girl
Here's
inside.
my interpersonal sensitivity coming out.
But you're like Ruben. Ruben's a girl as well. So, and that's great. I mean, I love that quality in a man. But I think just that ability as a woman to be able to be so open and honest, because what we're actually doing, and I don't think we realise we're doing it, in being open and honest about our own business and encouraging others to give that back, we're learning from other people by doing that.
Totally.
And so picking up so much.
Yeah.
You and I, Ben, I often have a talk to you, and I go back to him and go, Ben said that we're doing this, and that's interesting, and I like the sound of that.
We talk about what Destiny up to.
And we share and learn, and I think really that sharing and learning is a key component of being successful in business.
I agree. I think it's, when we're at high school and we're doing that test and we're covering up our answers so the person next door to you doesn't check your answers, and that's what we did in adolescence. But in adult life, we actually should be opening up our stance and letting them copy, because one of two things. One, you become someone who is reliable for good information, but two, it actually encourages you not to rest on your laurels, because person A is looking at your stuff. If you just sit on that, that's going to be old news next week. So you've got to be constant. It inspires you to keep fresh information and fresh content.
Although, Bryce, I can't relate, because I got kicked out of high school and failed all of my exams, so I was probably the one trying to copy.
And look at you, you're such a failure. Come on.
That's a story for another day. Now, before we wrap up, Margaret, there's a couple of things we want to talk about. We want to talk about your new course that you're obviously offering in terms of the mentoring that you do online, which is amazing.
Yeah.
But I also wanted to give you an opportunity. Is there anything that you want to tell the listeners that, as a takeaway, whether it be a life hack or something?
That's a good idea. We want your best life hack.
Something that you would say to anyone who's starting out in property, here's my number one thing that I would want to do.
Well, my best life hack is don't have 5 kids.
There you go, we'll make that one.
Whoa, talk about tired. Being tired is just a state of mind for me, and I suppose to deal with that, if you do have a lot of kids, or even 1 or 2 kids, and you think, I'm tired, stop thinking about how much sleep you're not getting, and be thankful for every hour you get. It's a mind shift, a paradigm shift, and that's how I got through all of that. Rather than think, I only got 3 hours sleep last night, I used to think, yes, I got 3 hours sleep. And that's great when you can change that.
Useful belief.
It is a useful belief.
It is a really, really useful belief to have. In terms of property, I think you've got to really not, even though it is important to want to build a big portfolio of property, I think you must focus on one property at a time, as I've already said. The reason I say that is because you are never going to buy property number 2 until you buy property number 1. And my experience is the majority of people procrastinate too long around that first property. They want it to be perfect. Your first property will not be perfect. In fact, it could be the worst one that you ever buy. But the thing is, even a property that's not perfect is better than one you never buy, because you're taking too long to get the job done. And while you're taking that time, property's going up in value, and then even the bad one would have been better than none. So,
rewind, listen to that again.
Yes.
That's gold.
15 seconds back, listen to that. That is absolutely
there's
gold.
that procrastination. I mean, how do you eat an elephant? You one bite at a time, don't you? And you just got to start.
But you have to start and set a goal and make a date and work backwards from that. I'm working with some groups at the moment, and what I got everybody to set some goals, and they all did what everybody does. They said, my goal is to buy a property. Well, that's not a goal, that's a wish.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's make it
Break
measurable.
it down.
So we got everyone then to set a date, and some people set a date for a year away, and I've said, why is it a year away? What, can't you borrow any money? Yeah, I've already got a loan approved. Well, don't make it a year away, you lazy easy thing, make it in 3 months' time. So we all set dates. But then what we did is we worked back from those dates and said, okay, well, if I'm going to have a property in my portfolio by March 1, it means that it has to be exchanged or unconditional 6 weeks before that. That's end of January, which means it has to be picked probably 2 weeks before that. That's middle of January, which means that I have to start the research probably 3 weeks before that. That's the end of December. Well, that's not going to work, so we now need to adjust our date and work back again and set the tasks and date them. I have to have this done by that date. I've got to have the research completed by this date. I've got to have the negotiation stage over by this date. And when you break it down into those chunks, you wake up one day and your property will be settled and you won't even realise you did it.
And then isn't it amazing once they get the first one and then 6 months in after they've got it, it's like, it's just a by thought now, isn't it? It's like it's just happening in the background.
I didn't die.
Hurt. Exactly.
I'm still alive.
My other first world issues are still with me, but that one's not one of them anymore.
Exactly.
And all of a sudden it's just accumulating wealth over time.
A goal without a date is just a dream. Now, in terms of people getting access to some of your information...
Okay, so Destiny. I really want to clear up a misconception here. Destiny was the first and still is a property investment advisor. Everybody talks about course. That is not the core focus of Destiny's business at all. It is a byproduct that we think is a critical step, but it is not what we do. So yes, we educate people, but we are not educators. We are property investment advisors. We were the first ones to ever take a financial planning model and overlay it into buying property, including risk profiling. We do property risk profiling, overlay them into the process of buying property, so that people buy property because it's a financial asset, not because it's a physical thing. It's not bricks and mortar at all. I mean, it is, but it's not bricks and mortar at all. It's a product, or it's an investment product. And out of that also came the course, because I do believe in education, and I was trying to teach people things, and then I thought I'll make it into a course. And we used to offer the course over 2 days in a lot of physical locations. Now, more recently, I've had a few health issues that have precluded me from travelling as much as I used to. But I also felt that because we'd almost grown a little too big, I was starting to lose touch with my clients, which is part of my job that I love the most. I love being with the clients, and everything was being delivered by other people. It was my stuff, but being delivered by other people. And I was also losing a little bit of control over the quality of that delivery as well. When it's delivered by other people, are they going to do it right? Are they going to say what I would say? Some do and some don't. So we then made that decision, and plus add to that the fact that we were no longer unique. Everyone was copying us, pretty much. Everyone was doing what we were doing. And it became harder for people to work out who they should be using. So we made that decision that what we needed to do, as we did when we were pioneers back then, we needed to be pioneers again. So what we've done is we've decided to take on a completely digital model. Now that doesn't mean that you just get us dealing with you over the phone. That's not a digital model. What it means is an entire process of helping and supporting property investors by giving them a range of services that they can access without having to leave their own home. And they're very high quality services. Starting with the course, which is now delivered online, but it's delivered completely interactively. We've had 111 graduates since it went digital, and 107 of them have given us a 5-star review.
Fantastic.
And the others gave us 4-star, with just, I don't know, some people just want
feedback.
to give you 5.
Yeah, some people
Have you noticed the YouTube videos that have gone 29 million or something, and there's like 155,000 likes, and there's always 17 dislikes? It's just part of life.
But that's fine. The 4 stars is still very good. So I spent a year bringing that to your screen in such a way that I filmed 168 tutorials to camera. It's great. It's very interactive, great resources in that. And we like all of our clients to start there because it means that everybody's starting on a level playing field. From there, you go then into your one-to-one with a qualified property investment advisor, of course, member of PIPA. They're all QPIAs, screen sharing, all that sort of stuff. You'll use Destiny Live, which is a tracking system that tracks everything. Very soon, it's got built in what they call APIs I can
APIs
talk.
part of our world.
I can
Yes,
talk
we know.
IT when I need to. President. And what that does then is very soon it'll have everything drop into it as well. So your bank accounts will drop into it, or your property investment statements will drop in. You won't have to do as much input. It'll all be automatically input for you. The other thing that you do is you get me now a lot more. So you get joined up in what's called a cloud room. We have up to 15 people in the cloud room, and we meet once a month. And for an hour to an hour and a half, we all come on. And after the first 10 minutes, you forget you're not in the same room. Like, you actually feel like you're in the room with everyone.
Technology is amazing those days.
Yeah, and it's really cool. Some of our clients sit there with a little glass of red wine, and it's quite cool. And finally, we have Chatter. And Chatter is almost like a Facebook iteration. It's like a big forum for our Destiny community, and clients can share everything. Does anyone know a good property inspector in Logan? Does someone have a property manager in Christie's Beach? And we all go on there and we all collaborate and help each other, and it's just fabulous.
Brilliant. It's almost like your money, your call
I was
live into your
kind
show.
of
It's
like that.
great.
I was going to say a little intimate community there, which is
kind of
terrific.
like that, yeah.
And you're active on Twitter, any of the other socials?
Don't talk to me about social media. I get such a hard time from...
But at Margaret Lomas is...
Yes, it's Margaret Lomas AU.
AU.
For Twitter, you can come on Twitter, Facebook.
And we'll put it all in the
that
show
sort of
notes and
stuff.
all the links into the course
I'm on
information.
them all.
Yeah.
I just get busy.
Yeah.
So I don't post.
Too busy looking at the next
You're like
property.
Kingsley over here. He loves his Twitter, but that's it.
Well, I just...
I tweet.
You tweet.
I tweet very rarely, but if I find something of value that I think people...
That's the point, isn't it?
That's it.
Ben's funny on Facebook. He'll go on holiday and then he'll put up big photos, and then just to make sure that he doesn't fall into the social media, he'll just go, "This is for you, Mum," so that everyone else who's watching it doesn't think it's all
She's
about
the only
them.
one who likes my pictures.
Look, I had to.
work for.
I have a professional Facebook page, Margaret Lomas. I do have a private one, but I had to change my name on that. I use an alias because I just kept getting people. And I really only set it up. Well, it's not Barbara. I set it up just for my family, really. And then all of a sudden, all these people, and I didn't want people to think I was ignoring them or rejecting them. I felt bad, but I also didn't want everyone out there to watch when my kids, post a picture of them. Maybe they're at the pub a bit long and they're going to drink in my hand. I didn't want to have that.
And if you missed the Barbara, people were coming up before Margaret was saying, "Are you Barbara?" So that's what
I love you on television. Your name's Barbara, isn't it?
That's Margaret.
Aren't you Barbara from that show? What's that show on television, Barbara?
Well, I've got to say, Ben, it's been terrific.
It has been amazing.
We've been angling for Margaret to come on the couch for a little while, and now we've strong armed her. We've finally got her on our 150. So thanks for coming, celebrating.
And hopefully we'll get you on again.
Yes. Well, we'll see. I said yes straight up then. I'm going to say no 50 times first.
And everyone heard that, then, so we won't cut it out. But it's been a pleasure.
Thank you for having me.
Congratulations on 20 years in the public spotlight, educating people, being one of the good guys or gals, and doing terrific stuff.
Yeah, and basically having a career that's been very fulfilling in terms of changing people's lives. So congratulations to you and to Destiny and to obviously Ruben as well in terms of what you guys have been able to achieve.
Ruben. He's always forgotten.
Yeah, he's always forgotten.
I don't even forget you.
But I just think, Ben, there's a few spots in this podcast where you just got to hit the 15 seconds backwards and have another listen to that. But thanks again for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
All right, Ben. So terrific.
Some gold there, Bryce.
There's
absolute gold.
There's a couple of opportunities in there that you rewind 15 seconds, 30 seconds, and listen to a couple of those things.
Agreed.
More than once, because there was terrific insights there. Successful businesswoman, successful property investor, lots of gold. Now, Ben, normally this is the point where I do a life hack, Ben.
It is.
But the people have voted.
No, they have. They've voted with their wallets.
They voted with their wallets.
Got an opportunity to hear Ivis's life hack.
Okay, so is this going to be an Android hack? No? It's going to be an Apple hack. Well done. Nice work. It is.
It's not going to be an Apple hack.
So
my life hack is
Can you
going to
speak
be...
up a little bit? Thank you. Come closer to the microphone.
Oh, this is fun, isn't it? How many times has this happened to us? Don't tap your pen.
Don't
come closer to the microphone.
Come back over here.
This is just sheer joy, Ivis. This is joy.
What do we got?
All right. So the life hack today, you know how, I'm pretty good at Google, right?
Yeah.
Pump up your own tires. Sure you are. Yeah, you are very good.
But you know how sometimes when you search something, and all those links comes on, you click on it, but you can't really find the spot,
the word.
Yes.
So what you do is just click on Control F, search for the words, and then you just read the part that matters to you.
Oh.
So, and it comes up in yellow, doesn't it? Did you know that? Control F. Say it again, Ivis. Let the listeners know. That's it. Bang. That's it. My job here is done.
And you're doing a
She's
terrific job,
the
by the
mic.
way. Terrific
She's
job, by
dropped
the way.
mic.
Oh.
She just went. There it is.
Sorry,
That's it.
made a noise.
Job done.
So,
Bryce with his flicking pen.
that was terrific. I'm very impressed. So
let me round it off. So, just for everyone understanding, put the word in, so the property couch, okay, and then you Control F, and then all highlights in yellow where that appears on the page.
Oh.
So if you click on it and you go through the actual page and like, where was that? Like that's what you're saying, isn't it?
So tell me, where would you use that? Give us an example of where you'd use that.
All the time.
All the time.
All the time.
Okay. You just rescued her.
I know,
which is
because she
terrific.
wasn't going to answer.
Okay. Very good.
Thank
so there you go,
Ivis.
folks. Life hack.
What else we've got from Ivis?
That's very clear.
Is that all?
No. She's going to ask you a question that you often forget, so we'll leave that towards the end.
Right. Yeah.
But did you know?
Did you know, Bryce, powerful earthquakes can permanently shorten the length of Earth's day?
Right.
How it does this is by moving the spin of the Earth's axis. In 2011, the Japan earthquake knocked 18 microseconds off our days.
How did they
In
measure
2004, Sumatra earthquake cost us around 6.8 microseconds. That's nuts.
that? Yeah.
That is
Two
amazing.
questions. One, how do they measure it? And two, it's like half a blink. Like no one's going to notice it.
Oh, yeah, but if you have enough of them, they slow down. You know how that's why
So,
if you think about it,
imagine if we had 100 earthquakes in a day, we'd lose like half a minute.
Why do we have? I wouldn't be worrying about the half a minute we've lost. I'd be worried about the lives and the devastation that those 100 earthquakes would have
No, I've
caused.
got to admit, mate, I did not know that. I did not
Why
know
do you
that.
think we've got a leap day? A leap year? a leap day and a leap year?
I don't know, mate. Has it got to do with the earthquakes?
It's got to do with resetting the time.
Yep.
So we add that extra day in there.
Do they factor in
Every
the
40.
earthquakes around the world when they put that extra
Well, they
day in?
might. Who knows? Green managed
Okay.
time might be. I don't know.
All right.
Here's another interesting one, which is probably in that same quality of conversation. There we go. Because I think this conversation is going really well. The first American film to show a toilet flushing on screen was Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho.
Fair dinkum.
Like, who would have thought? Who
mate.
would have thought that no other movie ever had shown a toilet flushing? Amazing.
Trivial pursuiters out there, bank that one. Any others?
Oh, there's a few here. I'm just reading them randomly because I haven't actually prepped, which is unusual for me because I'm very organised. In 2008, scientists discovered a new species of bacteria that lives in hairspray.
Right.
Women are going to say, what the?
No, there's men who use
Hairspray?
hairspray.
Sorry,
There's
bro.
men who use hairspray.
Who? Men using hairspray? Really?
Yeah. You didn't know that?
No, didn't know
There's
that.
guys who wear hairspray. There'll be listeners here who
They're
use
killing
hairspray.
the ozone, are they? No, that's C2O.
Well, they're just getting a new seed of bacteria.
Yes, that's true. Spray on hair? Is that what they...
I don't know. This is your Did You Know segment.
I don't know either.
All right, we've had a bit of fun.
We have had a bit of fun.
But the bottom line is, Ivis, did you know any of that? No, she's shaking her head.
Yep, there we go. Back to the norm. There we go.
So, 150 episodes. Margaret Lomas delivered heaps of gold. Did You Know was right up there, mate. It was like Christmas presents.
Sorry for the letdown, really.
There's Christmas presents all around on that one.
And we just hit the 150th. I've raised the bat. and
Ives
I've let you go.
has done an intro. She's done a life hack. So at this point, Ben, I'm going to get you to stand down because you've.
You mean I don't get to say
No,
my tagline?
because Ivis, until next week.
No, it's just empowering, but only if you act on it.
Wow,
Wow.
we like that.
There we go.
See you next week, folks.